Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to unlock some really profound insights from fascinating sources, giving you that aha moment,
Hmm.
making you genuinely well informed. Today, we're really embarking on quite a journey, a compelling exploration into the self, looking at inner transformation through the lens of, well, a giant in psychology. Our focus for this deep dive, it's Carl Jung. His work still sheds so much light on the depths of human psychology. But this isn't just going to be a theoretical discussion.
No, that's right. What makes this deep dive, well, different is that it draws from these really intimate reflections, someone who's incredibly close to Jung. So it gives this personal, lived perspective on his ideas, things like solitude, individuation, the unconscious. It's really about experiencing these ideas, not just thinking about them.
Right. So, our mission today is to pull out the most important sort of nuggets of knowledge about self realization, about inner development. Think of this as maybe your shortcut to understanding this, often misunderstood, very personal path of psychological growth, helping you connect with, a deeper sense of yourself. So let's unpack this. The narrator in these reflections, she starts by sharing her own childhood loneliness and how finding deep companionship later, especially with Jung, profoundly shaped her. It really makes you think about our fundamental need for connection. With others, yes, but maybe even more critically with ourselves. And speaking of Jung's early life, there's this really wonderful story about his childhood play, how he'd spend hours alone by the lake, digging little springs, building these intricate waterworks.
Hmm.
And what's truly fascinating there is how Jung realized later, much later, that this wasn't just, kids playing. It was a profound symbol for his entire life's work.
Yeah, it was about uncovering the unconscious, like gently clearing away sand to let something buried just flow naturally. The source actually reveals he'd do this waterworks ritual for days, sometimes even weeks, before starting any major writing.
Really?
For weeks.
Yeah. For him, it wasn't some quirky habit. It was, and he called it this, a sacred tuning of his inner world, a kind of necessary internal digging that had to happen before anything could come out. It completely shifts how you might think about creativity or insight, doesn't it?
Mm,
Not just intellectual effort, but this deeper inner flow you have to patiently uncover.
that's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
Sacred tuning,
Yeah.
internal excavation. It leads us actually pretty directly into a concept lots of people have heard of, but maybe misunderstand. Shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
Confronting the unconscious, the repressed parts of ourselves. There's this common idea, isn't there, that you can do this deep work in a group, like a shared confession. Well, the source material is pretty clear on this. It emphasizes that true shadow work cannot be done authentically in a group.
Hmm.
I mean, think about it. The realizations you face, they're often just too painful, too specific to you to just sort of share universally.
Makes sense.
It really demands a very specific one-on-one setting. The text says it powerfully. You need a human being to hold your hand when you go into that dangerous area.
Mm-hmm.
And you contrast that with, say, superficial group confessions, which ironically can sometimes act more like masks,
Hmm.
right? A way to hide, not reveal.
Huh. So the group setting might actually prevent the real work.
It can, because in private therapy, that pain of self-discovery, it becomes unavoidably real.
Mm.
And that's what makes it genuinely transformative. It forces you to actually engage with it, not just talk about it.
That idea of a deeply personal journey. Solitary in a way, but still supported. It's profound. It makes me think about how, well, vast and long term this inner development really is, not just for one person, but maybe across generations. It reminds me of that incredible dream Jung's colleague Max Zeller had about a symbolic temple taking 600 years to build.
Right. And that really begs the question, doesn't it? What could a 600-year project possibly mean for, individual human development?
Hmm.
Jung's interpretation was that this dream represented the huge multi-generational task of building a new kind of consciousness or a new spiritual paradigm. He even metaphorically linked it to the age of Aquarius, that idea of a shift in collective understanding.
Okay.
But what's crucial here is his belief that this metaphorical temple is being built right now by thousands of people just through their own inner development. Whether they even know Jung's name or his theories doesn't matter.
So it's a collective unconscious effort happening slowly.
Exactly. It's this slow unfolding thing, much bigger than any single lifetime.
That's incredible, a multi-generational soul project. And it brings us right to a core Jungian idea, individuation, this path of inner growth, becoming whole, unique. And it often connects to something many of us, kind of fear, solitude.
Yeah, what's really counterintuitive for a lot of people here is the argument that true individuation actually requires solitude. It insists on it. It's precisely in those periods of being alone that As the source says, the unconscious becomes a partner.
What partner?
Think about Jung's own example. He found that extended solitude, like in that tower he built, away from all the world's demands,
Huh.
it led him to hear the unconscious so clearly. He said it was almost as if it became alive. So it wasn't just quiet time. It was active engagement with his inner world, letting it speak without all the external noise.
So solitude isn't about being lonely, it's about making space for that partnership.
Exactly, making space for that deeper connection.
And Jung found these powerful symbols for these inner transformations, didn't he? In our shared human experience. There's a dream discussed in the source where Christ represents the feminine aspect of a man's psyche. Now that might surprise some listeners. Can you elaborate on what that means in a Jungian sense?
Certainly. Yeah, it can be surprising. For a man, Christ in this dream context can symbolize the integration of his anima. That's his unconscious feminine principle. It's about bringing together those inner opposites, you know, the masculine and feminine within himself, leading to a kind of psychological wholeness.
Okay, integrating opposites.
And for Jung, this phrase, to be crucified between the opposites, it's a really powerful metaphor for truly living your own unique destiny, which often means living it alone, if you have to, going against the grain of social norms or collective pressures.
Right.
So the teaching here is that Christ becomes the model for carrying your own cross. It symbolizes taking profound individual spiritual responsibility for your life rather than, say, relying on external saviors.
Owning your own journey.
Owning your personal suffering and growth, absolutely.
That's a very powerful, very personal take on such a universal symbol. Okay, let's switch gears slightly and explore another key Jungian idea. The animus in women. It's described as a kind of spirit or a voice of reason. So, is the animus specifically the unconscious masculine principle for a woman, and what happens if it isn't integrated?
Precisely. It's the unconscious masculine principle within a woman, often showing up as her inner voice of logic or opinion or maybe drive. Now, when the animus is unintegrated, it can manifest as problems like coldness or maybe being really rigidly opinionated, a kind of disconnection from her deeper self. A woman might feel, empty, as if her ideas aren't really hers. The source uses the phrase, she hasn't digested them.
Hasn't digested them.
Yeah. And there's this vivid metaphor used, she dreams her teeth are falling out, which symbolizes losing true, embodied personal thought, like the ability to really chew on and own her ideas. We also hear about a specific named internal voice, negi, representing this negative animus. And a point is made that naming these inner critics helps you disidentify from them, to see them as not you.
That makes sense. Giving it a name creates distance.
Exactly. But it raises a crucial question. What if these inner voices, like negi, aren't dealt with internally? Well, the source suggests they often manifest externally, maybe in partners or in conflicts, because our relationships so often mirror what's going on inside us.
Wow. That's a stark reminder, isn't it, how our internal world shapes our external reality. And there's another fascinating warning in the source against something called vampire energy, where thought gets separated from feeling, leading to this sort of loss of soul, an inner emptiness.
Yes, and this really highlights the absolute necessity, as the source puts it, to bite, chew, swallow, and evacuate our ideas, which means basically ideas have to be lived. They have to be digested psychologically. They can't just be intellectual concepts floating around.
They need to become part of you.
Right. Integrated into your feelings, your actions. Otherwise, it's just empty. Now, there's also this significant temptation discussed, projecting your own greatness onto external figures, like religious leaders or generals, presidents, whoever.
Why do we do that?
Well, the source says it's just far easier to worship another than to follow your own star. Because following your own star, that means embracing isolation, uncertainty, your unique path. It's demanding work. It's much harder. The poet Shelley is mentioned, for example, projecting his feelings of alienation onto the moon. It symbolizes how we sometimes externalize feelings instead of integrating them. And that's that vampire energy. It drains the soul because nothing is truly internalized.
So it sounds like the ultimate challenge is always bringing it back to ourselves, owning our own journey, integrating it fully. Which brings us, I think, to a really critical question for the world we live in now. With increasing technology, efficiency, collectivism, is humanity going to lose its individuality?
Well, the response from the source on this is pretty firm. It suggests there will be a reaction.
A reaction?
Yes. People simply cannot tolerate meaninglessness forever. It argues that many are already turning back toward personal existence and inner meaning. The human spirit, it seems, demands this re-engagement with the inner world. It feels like an almost inevitable pendulum swing back.
Okay, so what does all this mean for you listening right now? This deep dive into Jung's world, especially seen through these intimate reflections, it offers some extraordinary, deeply personal insights. We've touched on how inner work is sacred, often slow, profoundly personal, like Jung's childhood waterworks.
And that shadow work, while difficult, needs care and intimacy, usually one-on-one. Authentic transformation is rarely a public spectacle.
Right. And true change, the source implies, doesn't really come from big mass movements, but from individual transformation. That solitude isn't a punishment, but maybe a doorway to the unconscious.
Exactly. And finally, those powerful archetypes, like Christ, can serve as these deep models for taking real inner responsibility for your own destiny instead of just projecting it onto others.
These insights really hold profound implications, don't they, for your own journey of growth and understanding, especially in a world that can feel so full of noise and external demands.
They definitely remind us that the most significant work, the most meaningful stuff, often happens within, quietly, personally.
So as you go about your day, here's something to maybe ponder. Considering that deep human need for meaning, for personal existence, especially in our rapidly collectivizing world, what small daily acts of inner waterworks maybe could you cultivate, to uncover your own hidden springs and start building your unique inner temple?